Hi, I'm David.
Hi, I'm Yelena.
Welcome to our tutorial on MARICHYASANA C.
And this is Kani.
Oh, yeah.
He just doesn't really care.
Yeah. Kani doesn't practice Ashtanga yoga.
But he is in yoga all the time.
The state of yoga or the yoga studio? Both.
Both.
I don't know. I'm not
Maybe he should be teaching these tutorials.
Nope. He definitely shouldn't.
But if you like Kani or you like us, make sure to give us a heart on this video, subscribe, and maybe comment and let us know what else we can do, or what did you think about the video you are watching.
Okay. MARICHYASANA C. Marichi was a sage. So it's the sage pose. Call it the sage twist. Sounds like a dance. And this is the C version. So there's an A and a B, and there's a D. Actually, there's E, F, G, whatever, but much, much later. So in primary series, we do A, B, C, and D. And it's not the first twist that we do in our practice, but it's the first twist of the primary series. We do the twist in the fundamental asanas. Twisting is, well, it can be quite tricky.
It is quite tricky.
Yeah, I think so. It's not a range of motion that we sort of develop, right? Naturally. So usually when people are coming to yoga, twisting is a little bit difficult.
Right. It goes beyond the range that we use in our everyday life, because if something was that far back, you just
turn your body,
not try to maintain.
Like, David, get it for me.
Or that, yes.
Yeah, and then also, this is kind of related, where we come up against difficult movements, we come into a lot of compensatory movements that like ways that we can make it easier, right? That's where often we run into problems in terms of alignment, and over time, bad patterns that develop pain.
And then just like any other movement that we do in our practice, our body will influence also how we move. So body proportions play a kind of like a very obvious role, the most obvious being the length of your limbs. So if you have limbs that are not short as mine, twisting is a little bit easier for you. In fact, we have so many students that we've met over time where they can bind in MARICHYASANA C with their torso and their head still facing forward, because the length of their arms allows them to kind of wrap around the knee and bring the arm back without having to initiate the movement from their spine, which sounds great, especially for those of us that have struggled and have hard time twisting. But in the long term, it doesn't actually work out well until they learn the proper patterns and movements. Because remember, what we learn now as we kind of move through our practice, we just keep adding other layers. So we want to learn this as soon as
it's kind of fundamental.
Possible, yeah.
Okay, so let's look at what MARICHYASANA C is. First, we won't bother with the vinyasa. It's the same as most of them in the first half of the primary series, which is sapta, or chaturdashi, inhale, jump through, or panchadasha, inhale, jump through, get into position, chaturdashi.
Well, no.
Oh, wait, actually, you're right.
No.
You're right. Sorry.
This is where the pattern or the count pattern changes a little bit from all of the other seated stuff that we've done. So usually if we were doing just even the pose before MARICHYASANA C, so if we were doing MARICHYASANA B, we would sapta, inhale, jump through and set up, so get into the setup of the pose, and then ashtau, exhale into the pose. But in MARICHYASANA, the right side now changes where that sapta is all of it. So sapta, inhale, jump through, catch, that's one.
Yeah, it's supposed to be by the end of that breath, you're in the state of the asana.
So it speeds up. It gets actually harder.
Yeah, we talk about that and why that might be in some of our other tutorials. But if you want to see the count in that context, check, if you haven't already, we have a half primary and a full primary on this channel. You should check it out. You can see A, B, C, and D, and people doing the vinyasa and Yelena. But can we do just the C in? So we will do it. So from here, Yelena is going to go Sapta, inhale, jump through, and then ideally go all the way into the state of the asana, exhale. And then that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ashtau, inhale, hands down, pick up, and Nava, exhale, whatever, go back. Okay, Dasha, inhale, Yekadasha, exhale, and then it would be left side, Dwadasha, inhale, jump through. Okay, so let's just look basically at the action of twisting first. So what are our rules here? What are our patterns? Well, think of everything that's come before in the primary series. We've got a lot of, we're changing the legs. One leg is extended, the sides, we're still working with sides. So this would be something very similar to like Janushasana A or B or C, like the hips are even, the leg is out to the side. Ardha Baddha Padma Paschimottanasana with the leg in half lotus and bound, or even Tiriyang Mukha Eka. So, we've got that one leg changing, the one leg extended, and hips stay in the same line. So let's try to carry that pattern forward now into Marichyasana C. So remember I was talking about compensatory movements that we kind of naturally do to make things easier. That sounds good, right? Well, I would say the first one that we're going to run up against here is pulling the hip back, and so taking the hips out of alignment. And the reason that we probably don't want to do that is that when Yelena pulls her hip back like that, then she changes the angle of the pelvis by pulling the hip behind her, but also it's lifting up. And so she's actually shortening. Maybe, can you just turn that way for a second so I can show on the camera really well? So pull this foot back again. She's actually shortening here. Can you see it? And so if she was to twist like that, it's actually kind of drawing the rib and the hip together and down. So it's not terrible, but she's not going to get stretching there. And for some people, it will feel like compression pain. What I think we're missing there is potentially the stretch through the hip. That it seems to be this area that gets targeted in the first half of primary, right? So much that we're going to need in a second for the deeper movements of like leg behind the head and Baddha Padmasana, right? So we don't want to shorten around the top of the sacrum, between the sacrum and the rib cage. We want to try to keep that long. And we do that by keeping the hip in line, not pulling it back, and also keeping the hip down, right? This
is one of the important cues that we have in context of the primary series, where we have these 4 Marichasanas, A, B, C, and D. C is the only Marichasana where we want both of our hips to be down on the floor, or our sitz bones to be more specifically. We want to feel them grounding down. We don't lift one as we go into the pose.
Yeah. So let's look at how we can keep it there. The easiest thing is not to draw your right foot back as far, right? If you pull it back too far, you're not going to have an option except to open the knee out to the side and bring the hip back. But it doesn't have to come back like that. Make the hips your priority, keeping them down. Even if the hip lifts a little bit off the floor, that doesn't matter, but try not to let it draw back. And just pull the foot back to where you can, keeping the hips in line. 1. Okay? And then the foot should not be against the thigh. So you want space between the foot and the thigh. So the heel is more or less in line with the outer edge of your sit bone. Don't bring the foot too wide, because that is going to also disrupt your hip, and it puts your shin out of alignment with your thigh. And don't bring the foot too close, don't bring the foot too wide. It should be just right, just to the outside of the sit bone, and that's also going to help you keep your hips in line. Okay, so once we've established that, the other leg is extended, the toes are pointing up. Now, Jelena is going to try to isolate the twist so that if it's not coming from the hip and putting torque kind of pressure in the sacrum, then it's going to have to come from the rib cage. So she's going to try to keep the hips static, contained, stable, however you want to say it, and then twist from her upper body. Can you see that? So that in a way, by pinning this hip down towards the floor, then she's creating the stretch here around the waist. If that hip came back, she wouldn't be creating that stretch. It would be, well, at least a different kind of stretch. So pinning the hip down and then isolating the twist, this is where you're going to feel like a lot of resistance. Your body is going to, for most of us, it's going to make it tough. Would you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do not enjoy this pose.
Yeah. And then this is always my pose of regret, right? I always regret what I had for dinner the night before because I can always feel it in the,
Which is exactly what's supposed to happen as well.
You're supposed to regret?
No, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Or sit.
Sit with the feeling?
Sit with the feeling.
Sit with the
Name
shame.
the feeling. But you are going to feel a lot of pressure in your abdominal area, and that is kind of the intent behind the pose, because it creates this pressure, so it's like internally massaging your organs.
Wringing them out.
And it's good for the digestive purposes.
Agni, you're fire. So if we're, the first thing now we're going to do is, once we've got the hips, is twist. We're eventually trying to get that opposite arm around the leg, right? So you're probably going to want to lean back a little ways to get clearance for the chest to come around the leg, right? If you're too close in when you twist, it's hard to, there's no space. So you're going to have to lean back. So again, you don't want to change the hips. This is where I want you to try to go into a posterior tilt. Do you know anterior and posterior tilt? So you're rolling towards the back edge of your sit bone and creating like a little bit of roundness in the lower back. And that's going to help create some space there for your torso to turn, okay? And once you get the torso, the chest to twist enough to the side, you're going to bring your arm to the outside of the leg. Now, if this can be super tough. This might be where you are working. So in this case, you're going to keep now resisting pressure back through the arm. See how Jelena's thumb is up like that? So she's pushing back and trying to get opening across the front of the chest where it meets the shoulder here. And then she can really work that strength to create more twist.
Another common compensation here is to let the leg kind of collapse towards the center line, because it allows them, it feels like it's so much more freeing. And it's okay to do a little bit of that if it's going to help you find a twist. But then again, as David was saying, we push our extended arm into the knee, and we want to push that knee back into our arm, and that's going to encourage the twist to come from our spine versus us thinking that we're twisting because we've collapsed and let go of the work in that bent leg.
Mm-hmm. And get your whole body to work together as well. And then the other compensation here is if you're having trouble getting your arm to the outside of the leg, I guarantee this is what you're going to do. You're going to inwardly rotate like that. You're going to try to work from your arm more, without getting where the torso doesn't go, the arm will try to compensate. So can you see how Jelena's shoulder is collapsing forward? This is going to be problematic later on. So it does create like a lot of stretch, like stretch we're not looking for in the front of the shoulder, because your let's say your sort of muscles that want to hold the arm on the shoulder are going to work very hard to kind of keep it safe. But you're kind of going into a pattern that's not super, and then you're going to put pressure on it.
And often that's experienced as very kind of localized discomfort, pain, like almost needle-like, or you might feel like heat coming up, or even numbing too can sometimes. Numbing in the arm can be a result of that. So just watch out for that.
So the rule then would be thumb up. Okay, keep the arm externally rotated as you get into position. You don't want to internally rotate yet. And you're going to work that strength, those strengths against each other, like we said, to get as much of a twist as you can. And then, still holding your posterior tilt, you shift forward as much as you can. So now the twisting is done. We don't need the space. We're going to come back forward and get the shoulder as close as we can here to the knee. And you can see Yelena's elbow is way past her leg. She can, because it's Yelena, she's good at that. But a lot of you are going to be here. And your elbow is going to be just in line with your leg. We need, for this forearm to come around the leg, we're going to need the elbow to come past. Okay, so you're going to have to really reach out and then inwardly rotate, spin in. So thumb down, and she comes around. Okay? And as she comes around, she's going to try to keep this downward pressure. Here, the arm is pushing down, or the shoulder is pushing down to stay on the knee. Okay? And then should we turn around to show the other side of it? Or you can switch legs, whatever you want. Yep. So again, Yelena's pushing with the arm. She twists from the rib cage. The hips are going to stay more or less level. She comes in as close as she can. So look where the back of the shoulder is relative to the knee. That's good. And the elbow's way past now. She's going to reach and spin in. And then the hand comes around behind the back here. She's going to have to bear down through here. If you're working here but you can't bind yet, this back hand can rest on the floor and keep pushing you forward. Eventually, if you can shift your weight forward enough, this hand will be free, your back hand, where you can bring it around and catch the fingers here. Might just be like this at first. Eventually, you'll catch your wrist. And then the drishti is parshva drishti, which is side drishti. You look over your shoulder. Okay, great. Yeah. So this is a pose that we will often assist people into because it's so hard. You get to a limit and you can't get any deeper. So it's very normal for us to go around and help people bind. You know, bind is to catch.
Yeah, and one of the things, of course, we mention it in other videos, but when we help people, when we assist people, there's a sense of relaxing that happens. You let go a little bit of work in your muscle, and often with your struggle pose, there's so much work and tension. So that is what allows for the space for us to help someone bind and catch. Another tip that we always give is to slow down in this pose. If this is a pose that you're working on or a pose that you have difficult times, just take a few extra breaths as you prep. Don't rush it and kind of end up with
shitty alignment.
Shitty alignment. I was looking for an alternative to shitty, but it's just what it is, because that can also cause a lot of discomfort in the long run. So just take your time, use your breath. Notice how your breath can help you. Notice how as you exhale, you can often find a little bit more depth in the twist, and how inhale kind of can empower that, the lengthening that happens, and just take your time.
Yeah, it's a really interesting action that we're doing in this twist that is really, I think, one of the essential secret sort of movements of especially the primary series, which is posterior tilt. And so like a little bit of lumbar flexion, and then trying to get extension through the upper back. Mm-hmm. You know, that's the twist. You want to hold the sitz bones down and try to lift the chest up.
Yeah.
And you start looking through all the other poses as well, and that's also what's happening too.
And one of the things that might help you feel that is that even when we just pull our leg back, if you think that by kind of arching your back, which also causes this hip to come off the floor, that you're getting more height and it's going to make the twisting easier, it's going to start to hurt your lower back, but you're also going to notice that probably your hip flexors are even more engaged and tense, and sometimes it can start to hurt. Whereas in dropping into this rounding of the lower back helps us turn hip flexors off, even if ever so slightly, and then it allows for more ease into that twisting motion.
All right. Not so simple.
No.
But definitely rewarding. Really frees up a whole sort of new direction in your body that you're going to need as we go forward into deeper asanas.
We hope you enjoyed this video. Let us know by commenting, liking it, and subscribing.
Yeah. I don't know.
He definitely enjoyed it.
Thanks so much for joining us. Bye.